I'm a vampire who raised a human as my personal food supply. He was delicious. Every day I'd curl up on him to feed, drinking until I was completely satisfied. Until one day, I noticed floating comments. Keep drinking and you'll kill the big villain. Don't say that. Thanks to our ditzy female supporting character controlling the villain, he hasn't gone after the heroine to destroy everything yet. She doesn't realize he's the strongest supernatural being alive. The villain's death scene is pretty funny too. I think the author made him too overpowered. So the protagonists couldn't win. That's why the supporting character accidentally drains him dry. LOL, poor clueless supporting character. She kills her only protector, then gets captured for scientific experiments. So sad. What? I'm going to drain Sebastian to death and get experimented on? I immediately retracted my fangs. I won't drink anymore. But Sebastian pressed me back to his chest, his rough voice soothing me. Sweet girl, have a little more. I'm a vampire who hibernated for a millennium. But when I awakened, everything had changed. First, my coffin was extremely difficult to open. I pushed from inside for ages, but couldn't budge the lid. I had to waste the small amount of power I'd accumulated over centuries to blow the top off. I emerged from the coffin. The dusk heat after sunset felt slightly burning, making me instinctively curl up. Then I noticed a pair of leather boots. I craned my neck to look. A human man stood there. He smelled wonderful. Definitely tasty. I licked my lips and asked politely, "May I have one bite?" The man didn't respond, just gazed down at me. I dislike looking up at anyone, so I struggled to climb out of the explosion crater, then dusted off the soil, and wood fragments from my skirt. After all that effort, my hunger intensified. My belly rumbled loudly. I hadn't fed for an entire millennium. I asked once more. Please, just one tiny bite? I raised a single finger pleadingly. Only one. The man arched his brow. You destroy my family tomb, and want to bite me as well? Even after being disconnected from modern times, I understood what a tomb meant. I rigidly turned around. Behind me lay a graveyard. In the crater I'd made sat a marble headstone reading, Sebastian L., beloved father. The middle section was blast damaged and illegible. I actually ruined someone's tomb? Who built a tomb over my coffin? I immediately apologized. Sorry, it wasn't intentional. I couldn't escape otherwise, so I had to blast out. The man said little, simply lifted me up. His eyes examined my ears before settling on my back wings. What are you exactly? Some bat creature? What bat creature? Foolish human. I'm a vampire. A distinguished vampire princess. He appeared contemplative. Definitely bat-like. I got flustered. I told you, I'm not a bat. The foolish human carried me off. He claimed I'd damaged his father's tomb and owed compensation. I inquired, how much? Him, $800,000. I couldn't determine if that was expensive or cheap, but I possessed zero money. I bargained with him. My attendant has funds, he'll compensate you. The human lifted an eyebrow. Where's this attendant? Right, where was my attendant? Humans have brief lifespans. My attendant from 1,000 years past must be deceased. So, I'm attendantless now? Who'll serve me going forward? I examined him thoroughly from head to toe. Perhaps you could become my attendant? He resembled my previous attendant and smelled equally appetizing. Actually, why do humans all look identical? But this human showed no respect whatsoever. He laughed mockingly. You should serve me instead. Disrespectful human. I'm a vampire princess. How dare you suggest I serve you? I exposed my fangs and pounced to bite him. He restrained me with one hand. Invisible power surged around his frame. I became immobilized. He effortlessly contained me. Little bat, try biting again, and I'll extract your fangs. My long slumber must have weakened me. I couldn't even defeat one human. How depressing. He transported me to his residence, where I became his attendant. He assigned countless chores, organized the library, serve refreshments. I'd never performed such labor. Within 3 days, I was drained. I collapsed in a chair, ignoring all his commands. He approached, fetch my coat.
Me?
Absolutely not. He noted, you're my attendant. I protested. I am not. I never consented. He replied leisurely, very well. I couldn't grasp his meaning, but from that afternoon forward, he stopped commanding me. However, a new issue emerged. That evening, the cook prepared an elaborate feast. Everything appeared delectable. Though I'm a vampire sustained by blood, I adore human cuisine. Absolutely delicious. Since human food provides no nourishment, I can consume enormous quantities. I waited expectantly at the dining table for someone to provide utensils. Yet Sebastian began eating while no one served me. I protested. Where's my silverware? The huma. Humans stated matter-of-factly. Eating is forbidden for you. I gaped. Why can't I eat? You're indebted and refuse to work. No eating privileges. How unreasonable. I pressed against the table looking pathetic, hoping to inspire compassion. But even after he completed his meal and servants removed everything, he denied me even one morsel. Absolutely infuriating. Cruel human. So heartless. I'll locate a new attendant. Escape proved impossible. Some mysterious force enclosed the entire manor. I was completely trapped. That night, I transformed into a small bat to fly away, but collided with an invisible barrier that bruised my head. I returned tearfully to my room and discovered someone occupying my bed. He smirked. Returned so soon? I sulked. Release me. I'll find someone to repay you. My gift lay entirely in recruiting attendants. If freed, I'd certainly find an excellent one. He declined. No. Can't escape. I can't eat. My situation is pitiful. I slumped dejectedly. What exactly do you want from me? Remain here and work off your debt. I despise debt labor. Daily work requirements. So exhausting. After completely disheveling the library, I abandoned the duster and collapsed dramatically across his desk, prodding him weakly. I'm starving, need food. He glanced up. 3 hours ago you consumed a bowl of ramen with double eggs, instant noodles with extra meat and 12 chicken nuggets, coffee, bubble tea, smoothie, plus 5 pounds of grapes, 7 pounds of jerky, 12 pounds of shrimp, and a breakfast sandwich. He continued, and now you claim hunger. I consumed merely that small amount. Isn't hunger perfectly natural? Must he memorize every detail? I inflated indignantly. That's human food. It's not filling. I fixed my gaze on him intently. Since awakening, I hadn't consumed blood once. Absolutely famished. Hunger makes his scent even more enticing. I swallowed hungrily. He angled his head. You wish to feed on me? I bobbed my head enthusiastically. Then remembered subtlety was preferable. I wavered. Just one small bite. Barely anything. He reclined in his chair and gestured me closer. My face brightened as I hurried around the desk to him. He drew me into his embrace. Perched on his lap, I blinked hopefully. May I bite you now? He offered his wrist. Proceed. I chomped down eagerly. My instincts were correct. He tasted exquisite. Unfortunately, he refuses to serve me. What's objectionable about being my attendant? A vampire princess could bestow longevity far exceeding normal humans' ignorant short-lived being. After confirming Sebastian's deliciousness, I continuously bothered him for feeding opportunities. But he invariably demanded something in return. Initially household duties, retrieving items, serving drinks. He thoroughly enjoyed commanding me. Eventually, he prohibited my wandering. He required me to sit quietly on his lap during his work. Human labor is incredibly dull. I yawned and dozed in his arms. Upon waking, he continued working. I studied his throat extensively. Primary artery, certainly abundant with delicious blood. I crave biting it desperately, but I cannot overpower him. How might I steal a taste? My thoughts drifted until I heard a voice overhead. Agree to one request, and you may feed. I froze. The voice hadn't come from Sebastian. It hadn't come from anywhere in the room. The words simply appeared above my head alongside the floating comments. Oh no. The supporting character is starting to see the system messages. This is where she accidentally agrees. Girl, stop reading and start running. Too late. The villain is already attached. I blinked repeatedly. then pointed upward. Sebastian. Are there words floating above me? He didn't even look up from his documents.
No.
Then either I'm hallucinating or the ceiling is talking. Likely the first option.
Rude.
The mysterious voice repeated itself. Agree to one request, and you may feed. I immediately sat upright. One request. The voice vanished. I waited. Nothing. The comments continued drifting by. Ha ha ha, she heard it. This is how the plot starts moving. Don't do it.
Do it.
I'm curious. I was curious too. Unfortunately, I was also starving. I slid off Sebastian's lap and circled his desk. Sebastian.
No.
You don't know what I'm asking. I know exactly what you're asking. I stopped. Can I bite you?
No.
How did he keep doing that? I crossed my arms. You refuse every time lately. I allowed you to feed this morning. That was 8 hours ago. That's not a long time. It is for me. It is not. We stared at each other. The comments drifted by. Married couple argument. They're not married.
Yet.
I pointed accusingly at the air.
See?
The ceiling thinks you're unreasonable. Sebastian finally looked up. The ceiling? The ceiling. He pressed 2 fingers against his temple. For some reason, humans always did that around me. The next morning, I discovered the mysterious voice hadn't been lying. A request appeared. Clean your room, and you'll receive 1 feeding opportunity. I examined my room. Clothes covered every surface. Books formed unstable towers. Half-finished snacks occupied locations I didn't remember placing them. A servant passing the doorway glanced inside, then immediately walked away. Interesting. Apparently my room was messy. I considered ignoring the request. Then my stomach growled. Loudly. Very loudly. Fine. For blood, sacrifices must sometimes be made. 3 exhausting hours later, the room sparkled. The voice returned. Request completed. Reward granted. I gasped. It's real. Without hesitation, I sprinted through the manor. Sebastian. The servants scattered. One dropped a tray. Another ducked behind a statue. I burst into his office. Good news. He looked up. That's rarely true when you say it. I earned blood. His expression didn't change. Earned it from whom? The invisible voice. Silence. Then more silence. Then even more silence. Finally he asked, the invisible voice is paying you in blood? Yes. And how exactly? I stopped. That was a good question. The voice hadn't specified. The comments exploded. LMAO. She never thinks ahead. Sebastian's trying so hard. Someone help him. Before I could answer, the office door opened. A silver-haired man entered. The moment he crossed the threshold, every instinct in my body screamed. Danger. Not human. Extremely not human. The man smiled pleasantly. Good afternoon. I immediately climbed onto Sebastian's chair. Then onto Sebastian. Then halfway behind Sebastian. The stranger blinked.
Sebastian sighed.
You frightened her. I haven't spoken. Exactly. The silver-haired man laughed. But his eyes never left me. And for the first time since awakening, I noticed something familiar.
Power.
Ancient power. The kind that belonged to creatures who had lived far too long. The comments became frantic.
Wait.
Already? He's appearing this early? That's not supposed to happen. The heroine hasn't even entered the story yet. The strongest supernatural factions are moving.
Oh.
Big O. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. The silver-haired man tilted his head. Interesting. Sebastian's arm immediately settled around my waist. Possessively. Protectively. Dangerously. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. The stranger's smile widened. Sebastian's eyes narrowed. And suddenly I realized something alarming. The comments had always called Sebastian the strongest supernatural being alive. But, for the first time, I was looking at someone who didn't seem afraid of him at all. The silver-haired man glanced at me and said softly, So, this is the little vampire who's been keeping the monster occupied. The entire office went silent. Beside me, Sebastian stopped smiling. And somehow, that was much scarier than if he'd looked angry. The silver-haired man's words hung in the air. So this is the little vampire who's been keeping the monster occupied. I looked at Sebastian, then at the stranger, then back at Sebastian. Monster? Sebastian calmly reached for a document.
No.
The stranger laughed. That's what you're objecting to? Yes. Not the occupied part. That part is accurate. I puffed up indignantly. Excuse me. I'm not occupying anyone. The comments immediately appeared. Girl, you're literally sitting in his lap. Look down. I looked down. I was, in fact, sitting in Sebastian's lap. Again. In my defense, there had been danger. The silver-haired man seemed delighted by my expression. I like her. No, Sebastian said instantly. You don't get a vote. I absolutely do. The man ignored him and offered me a hand. My name is Adrian. I stared suspiciously. Are you trying to steal me? Sebastian's fingers tightened around my waist. Adrian laughed so hard he nearly doubled over. Oh, that's precious. The comments were having the time of their lives. She asked it like someone asking if he's stealing a sandwich. Protective Sebastian activated. Watch him. Sure enough, Sebastian looked one mildly inconvenient sentence away from throwing Adrian through a wall. Adrian eventually recovered. No, little vampire. I'm not stealing you. Good. I relaxed. Sebastian relaxed. Adrian immediately added. I'm evaluating you. Everyone became tense again. Including me. What does that mean? It means, Adrian said, that supernatural society has suddenly discovered an ancient vampire princess living inside Sebastian's manor. I blinked.
Oh.
And that's concerning.
Oh.
Very concerning. I thought about it, then nodded. That's fair. Both men looked surprised. I shrugged. I exploded out of a coffin and immediately tried to bite someone. You also destroyed a mausoleum, Sebastian added. That too. Adrian rubbed his forehead. You aren't worried? Should I be? Most people would be. I slept for 1,000 years. That seemed like a perfectly reasonable explanation. Adrian stared, then slowly nodded. You know what? Fair. The comments agreed. Honestly, she has a point. After a 1,000-year nap, I'd stop caring too.
Mood.
Adrian spent the next hour asking questions. Most of them were boring. What year was I born? I didn't know.
How old was I?
Also didn't know. Who were my political allies? Definitely didn't know. Apparently, I was terrible at history. Eventually, Adrian gave up. You remember nothing useful. I remember my attendant. What was his name? I froze. The room became quiet. I don't remember. That was strange. I remembered his face, his voice, the way he'd brushed my hair before bed, the books he'd read to me, but not his name. For some reason that made my chest hurt. A strange sadness settled over me. Sebastian noticed immediately. His hand rested lightly on my head. The feeling vanished almost instantly. Adrian's eyes flickered toward the gesture. Interesting. Very interesting. The comments exploded again. He noticed. Everyone noticed. Subtle as a brick. They're so obvious except to themselves. I pointed accusingly at the floating text. What's obvious? Neither man answered. Cowards. Eventually Adrian stood. I have what I need. Which is? Adrian looked directly at Sebastian. Confirmation. I didn't like the sound of that. Neither did Sebastian. The atmosphere in the room became heavy. Adrian's smile disappeared. For the first time, he looked serious. Things are moving faster than expected. What things? I asked. The people looking for her. My ears twitched. Looking for me? Adrian nodded. Some want to study you. I immediately remembered the comments. The supporting character gets captured for scientific experiments. My entire body stiffened. Others want to control you. Worse. And some, Adrian continued, want you dead. Much worse. I slowly rotated toward Sebastian. I don't like any of those options. Neither do I. That answer made me feel slightly better. Then Adrian delivered one final piece of terrible news. They've already started searching. The room fell silent. Even the comments disappeared. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then I asked the important question. If people are hunting me, yes? Does this mean I don't have to do chores anymore? Adrian choked. Sebastian closed his eyes. I continued. Because technically I'm a wanted fugitive now. You're not a fugitive. Future fugitive. That's not better. It sounds important. Adrian started laughing again. Sebastian looked like he regretted every decision that had led him to this moment. Then suddenly, a loud alarm echoed through the manor. Every window flashed crimson. Adrian's smile vanished. Sebastian was already standing. The playful atmosphere evaporated instantly. For the first time since I'd met him, I saw genuine danger in his eyes. A servant burst through the door. Sir, what happened? The servant looked pale. The outer barrier. My stomach dropped. The barrier? The one even I couldn't escape? The servant swallowed hard. It's under attack. The comments returned all at once. Oh no, not yet. This arc is happening way too early. Everybody run. I looked toward the window. Far beyond the estate grounds, something enormous slammed against the invisible barrier surrounding the manor. The entire sky rippled.
Once. Twice.
Then a third time. Cracks of silver light spread across the horizon. And for the first time, since waking from my 1,000-year sleep, I felt afraid, because whatever was outside had just damaged a barrier created by Sebastian. The entire manor shook. Books tumbled from shelves. Crystal rattled. Somewhere downstairs, a servant screamed. I immediately wrapped both arms around Sebastian. Not because I was scared. Purely for balance. The comments disagreed.
Sure.
Balance. We totally believe you. Sebastian glanced down at me. You can let go.
No.
Another impact slammed into the barrier. The sky flashed silver. I grabbed him tighter. Definitely not. Adrian had already moved to the window. For the first time since meeting him, he wasn't smiling. That was concerning. People who smile all the time should continue smiling. It's unsettling otherwise. What is it? I asked. Adrian stared into the distance. Trouble. That was unhelpful. Outside, the silver cracks spread farther across the evening sky. The barrier surrounding the estate resembled shattered glass. I swallowed. Can they get in? No, Sebastian answered.
Boom.
The barrier cracked again. Eventually. That was less reassuring. The comments started flying by. This is bad. Way worse than the original story. Nobody was supposed to find them this early. The heroine hasn't even shown up yet. Everything's off the rails. I didn't know who the heroine was, but I felt vaguely guilty. Perhaps I'd accidentally broken the story. It wouldn't be the first thing I'd broken. Sebastian's father's tomb came to mind. Actually, it would be the second thing. A servant rushed into the room. Sir, all outer wards have been activated. Sebastian nodded. Evacuate non-combat personnel. Immediately, sir. The servant disappeared. Combat personnel? Why did a household have combat personnel? I looked around. Nobody else seemed confused. Perhaps modern mansions came with armies. A third impact exploded across the horizon. The barrier shuddered violently. Then, crack. A piece broke. My wings immediately puffed out.
Oh.
The hole wasn't large. Barely the size of a carriage. Unfortunately, something was already squeezing through. Something enormous. Something with too many eyes. I counted 7. Then 11. Then realized they kept opening and closing. No thank you. The creature forced itself through the tear in reality and landed on the estate grounds. Trees flattened. Stone pathways shattered. The manor trembled. I pointed. What is that? Adrian's answer was immediate. A scout. I stared. A scout. Yes. The monster was the size of a building. Oh. The comments appeared again. To be fair, that's actually a scout. The big ones are much worse. Don't tell her that. Too late. I had already read it. Much worse? Nobody answered. That was answer enough. Outside, the creature raised its head. Dozens of eyes turned toward the manor simultaneously. Then toward me. Specifically me. I pointed at myself. Why is it looking at me?
Adrian's sight.
Because you're the reason it's here.
Rude.
I hadn't invited it. The creature suddenly shrieked. Every window in the manor shattered. I yelped and buried my face against Sebastian. Again for balance. Obviously. The comments had stopped believing me entirely. Before I could defend myself, Sebastian stood. The room became silent. Not normal silence. Heavy silence. The kind that made every instinct scream. Even Adrian straightened. Interesting. Very interesting. Sebastian gently removed my arms from around his neck. Stay here. Absolutely not.
No.
His expression didn't change. I'll be back. That's exactly what people say before something dramatic happens. A pause. Fair. I pointed toward the horrifying eye monster outside. What if it eats you? Adrian made a choking sound. Several servants suddenly found the floor fascinating. Sebastian looked at me for a long moment, then actually smiled. A real smile.
Small.
Amused. Dangerous. I don't think that's likely. The comments went insane. Oh, he smiled. She did it. Rare Sebastian smile sighting. Achievement unlocked. I was distracted by the comments. Big mistake. Because the next thing I knew, Sebastian had vanished. Not walked away. Vanished. One moment he was beside me. The next he was standing outside on the estate grounds. Hundreds of meters away. I blinked. Cheater. No human should move like that. Adrian joined me at the broken window. Together we watched the monster rear upward. It towered over trees, over fountains, over everything. Then Sebastian lifted one hand. Just one. The monster froze. The air froze. The clouds froze. Even the wind stopped. For a moment, the entire world seemed to pause. I heard Adrian mutter something. What? He didn't look away. Nothing. The comments weren't as quiet. Reminder that he's the strongest thing alive. No, seriously. Everyone always forgets. Watch this. The monster finally moved. It lunged. The ground exploded beneath it. The distance vanished. Its jaws opened wide enough to swallow a house. And Sebastian raised a finger.
Tap.
That's it. Just a tap. The monster stopped existing. Not exploded. Not torn apart. Not burned. It simply ceased. One moment, it occupied space. The next there was nothing there. No body. No blood. No remains. Nothing. A perfectly monster-shaped absence lingered in the air. The entire estate went silent. I stared. Adrian stared. The servants stared. Even the comments stopped for several seconds. Then,
see?
That's what I've been saying. Completely unfair character. Author had no idea how to balance him. I slowly looked from the empty field to the man standing calmly in the center of it. Then I looked at Adrian. Then back at Sebastian. Then back at Adrian. That's the guy I've been bullying for snacks. Adrian covered his face. Yes.
Oh.
A beat passed. Then another. I considered everything carefully. The impossible barrier. The invisible power. The comments. The monster disappearing from reality. Finally, I reached a conclusion. I may have made several poor decisions. You think? The worst part? Sebastian turned around, looked directly at me through the shattered window, and held out his hand, as if expecting me to come to him. Without thinking, I jumped out the window. The servants screamed. Adrian shouted something. I ignored both. My wings snapped open. I glided directly toward Sebastian, and landed in his arms. The moment I did, something changed. A strange mark beneath my collarbone suddenly burned. Sebastian's expression vanished. Completely. The playful amusement. The calm confidence. Everything.
Gone.
His gaze locked onto the glowing symbol. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked shocked. And the comments appeared so fast I could barely read them.
Wait.
No way. That mark. It's awakening already. That's impossible. Oh, this changes everything.
Aurore arrive.
She's negotiating snack privileges. Honestly, that's our girl. I ignored them, because I had discovered something much more important. The golden text had called me a royal heir. A royal heir to what? And, more importantly, why did every ancient monster in existence suddenly know where I lived? 30 days sounded like a very short amount of time to figure that out. 30 days. That was not enough time. Not enough time to solve ancient mysteries. Not enough time to identify horrifying monsters. And definitely not enough time to convince Sebastian that unlimited feeding privileges were a reasonable emergency response. I was still working on that last one when Adrian returned 3 days later carrying a stack of folders. A very large stack. He dropped them onto the dining table. The table cracked. I stared. What's that? Your problems. I stared harder. Can I have different problems?
No.
Unfortunate. Adrian opened the first folder. Inside was a photograph. The moment I saw it, I nearly dropped my tea. The picture showed a woman standing atop a mountain of bones. Long silver hair, crimson eyes, bat wings,
A crown.
She looked exactly like me.
Well.
An older version. A much more intimidating version. A version that definitely knew how taxes worked. I pointed. That's me. No, Adrian said. Then why does she look like me? Because she's your ancestor.
Oh.
I looked again. Then looked closer. Then even closer. She's prettier. Sebastian, seated beside me, calmly took a sip of coffee. She's literally identical. Her posture is better. The comments appeared. Valid. Honestly, valid. Adrian looked seconds away from throwing the folder at me. This is Queen Seraphina. The name felt strange. Familiar. Like hearing a song I used to know. The last ruler of the Night Kingdom. I raised a hand. The what kingdom? Adrian froze. You don't remember the Night Kingdom? No. The empire that dominated half the world.
No.
The most powerful supernatural civilization in recorded history?
No.
The reason 3 separate species nearly went extinct?
No.
The silence stretched. Finally, Sebastian spoke. She's been asleep for 1,000 years.
Right.
Adrian sat back down. I keep forgetting. The comments drifted by. To be fair, waking up after a 1,000-year nap sounds disorienting. I'd forget taxes too. The next folder contained maps. Ancient cities. Castles. Ruins. Buried temples. Apparently my family had owned all of them. Then came the third folder. Adrian opened it. Immediately regretted it. Because a photograph slipped out and landed face up on the table. I leaned over. Who's that? Adrian lunged for it. Too slow. I already saw a younger Sebastian standing beside Adrian. Both looking annoyed. Both covered in blood. Both apparently several centuries younger. I blinked. Then blinked again. Then pointed. Sebastian. He looked up. Were you alive when photographs became blurry? The comments exploded. Critical hit. Direct damage. She accidentally called him old. Adrian nearly fell out of his chair laughing. Sebastian stared at me. Calmly. Dangerously. I immediately slid my chair 3 inches away. For safety. I meant distinguished. You meant old. I absolutely did. The comments celebrated my honesty. Eventually, after several minutes of Adrian laughing and Sebastian pretending not to be offended, we returned to business. Unfortunately, because the next folder wasn't funny. Inside were dozens of photographs. Missing people. Destroyed towns. Ruins. Entire forests wiped off maps. I frowned. What happened? Adrian's smile disappeared. The search. The room became quiet. The creatures coming for you? He nodded. Some of them have already started moving. I looked at the photographs again. Something uncomfortable settled in my stomach. Not hunger. Something else. These weren't random attacks. Every location seemed connected. Almost like they're looking for something. Adrian's eyes widened slightly. Correct. I pointed to a ruined temple. And this. Another photograph. And this. Then a third. These are all old places. Neither man interrupted. So, I continued. Very old. Ancient.
From before my sleep.
The realization sent a chill through me. They aren't searching for me. Adrian slowly nodded. They're searching for whatever was sealed with you. The room fell silent, because suddenly everything made sense. The warning, the mark, the memories, the monsters. Something had happened 1,000 years ago. Something bad enough that an attendant had told a princess to run. Something important enough to be hidden for a millennium. And somehow, I was connected to it. The comments became unusually subdued. Here we go. This is where things stop being funny. The real story starts here.
I didn't like that.
I preferred the funny story. The one involving snacks. And naps. And occasionally annoying Sebastian. This new story sounded significantly more dangerous. As if sensing my thoughts, Sebastian placed a hand on my head. A familiar gesture. Comforting. Steady. The strange anxiety eased immediately. I leaned into it instinctively, then froze, because another memory surfaced.
A
Stronger one this time. Not my attendant. Someone else.
A man. Tall.
Dark-haired. Standing beside a throne. His face remained blurry, but his voice was clear. Protect her. The memory shifted. Screaming. Fire.
Blood.
A city burning beneath a crimson sky. Then, if the seal breaks, they'll wake. I gasped. The vision vanished. The teacup slipped from my fingers. Sebastian caught it before it hit the floor. Unfortunately, that wasn't the important part. The important part was the final image I'd seen. Because for just a second, just 1 second, I'd seen the face of the person speaking. And he looked exactly like Sebastian. The comments appeared instantly.
Well.
There it is.
Oh.
Oh no. She finally saw it. Saw what? Nobody answered. I slowly turned toward Sebastian.
He was already looking at me.
Expression unreadable.
Calm. Too calm.
And for the first time since meeting him, a terrifying possibility occurred to me. Maybe Sebastian wasn't simply powerful. Maybe he wasn't merely old. Maybe the reason nobody could explain him was because he'd been there. 1,000 years ago. Maybe Sebastian had been there. 1,000 years ago. Maybe he had watched my kingdom fall. Maybe he had watched me disappear. Maybe. Stop staring. I blinked.
What?
Sebastian calmly turned a page in the report he was reading. You're thinking too loudly. I wasn't aware thoughts made noise. Yours do.
Rude.
The comments agreed. He's not wrong. Not helping. Before I could continue interrogating him, the golden text returned. Final memory sequence available. Authorization. Royal heir. I barely had time to read it before the world vanished. I was standing in a city. My city. At least, I somehow knew it was mine. Moonlit towers stretched toward the clouds. Silver bridges connected crystal spires. Thousands of lights illuminated the night. The Night Kingdom.
Alive. Whole.
Beautiful.
And burning.
Flames consumed everything. The sky was red. Screams echoed through the streets. Monsters filled the horizon. Ancient creatures. The same creatures now searching for me. Only there were hundreds, thousands. I saw vampires fighting. Werewolves. Mages. Beings I couldn't even name. And losing. Everywhere they were losing. Then I saw her. Queen Seraphina. The woman from the photograph. My ancestor. She stood atop the palace stairs. A crown upon her head. Blood running from dozens of wounds. Yet every enemy still feared her. Because she wasn't retreating. She was buying time. For someone. For me. The vision shifted. I was suddenly inside the palace. A small child sat upon a throne.
Me.
Not physically me. But me. A younger version. No older than 10. The princess. The last heir. The child was crying. Someone knelt before her. A familiar attendant. The one from my memories. At last I saw his face clearly. And my breath caught. Because he looked exactly like Sebastian. Not similar. Not related. Exactly. The attendant gently wiped the tears from the child's face. Your Highness. I don't want to leave. You must. They'll kill everyone. His expression softened. They won't kill everyone. The child looked up hopefully. Then he smiled sadly. They'll only kill most of us. Even in the middle of an apocalypse, he was sarcastic. Some things never changed. The memory continued. Queen Seraphina entered the room. For a moment, I thought I was looking into a mirror. The resemblance was that strong. She knelt before the child.
Before me.
The kingdom cannot be saved. The little princess began crying harder. So we lose? No. Seraphina placed a hand over the child's heart. We wait. Silver light flooded the room. The monsters want the crown heart. The glowing mark on my chest. The source of our kingdom. The queen's gaze hardened. So we hide it. The attendant looked toward the distant sounds of battle. They'll search forever. Good. The queen smiled. Let them. The room shook. The palace was falling. Outside, something enormous roared. The queen stood. The attendant stood beside her. Together they looked toward the battlefield. Toward certain death. Toward an impossible fight. Then Seraphina spoke one final command. Protect her. The attendant bowed. As long as I exist. The vision shattered. I woke in Sebastian's arms. Again. Apparently, that had become my default location. My face was wet. I was crying. The room was silent. Adrian looked away, giving me privacy. For once, I stared at Sebastian. Really stared. At the man who'd found my coffin. Who'd fed me.
Protected me.
Argued with me. Spoiled me. Carried me around when I was too lazy to walk. Who had somehow remained by my side for 1,000 years. You promised. His expression softened. Just slightly. I did. You're my attendant, technically. I pointed accusingly. You made me do chores. You made me wait a millennium. That wasn't intentional. Neither were the chores. The comments exploded. He admitted it. Wait, he actually admitted it. I knew it. Sebastian ignored them. Unfortunately, I could not. Why didn't you tell me? The amusement vanished from his face. For the first time, he looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone carrying a burden for too long. Because I wasn't sure you'd remember. 1,000 years. He had waited 1,000 years. For a princess who might never wake. Who might never remember him. Who might never know he kept his promise. And somehow, he'd still been there. The realization hit harder than any monster. I buried my face against his shoulder. The comments immediately celebrated. She's hugging him. Finally. Only took 1,000 years. The next 27 days were chaos. Ancient monsters gathered. Supernatural armies mobilized. Hidden kingdoms emerged from secrecy. The entire world learned the truth. The last heir of the Night Kingdom had awakened. And everyone wanted something. Power. Control. Revenge. The crown. Heart. Unfortunately for them, they had to get through Sebastian first. That turned out to be a terrible strategy. The final battle arrived on the 30th day. The sky darkened. Ancient horrors filled the horizon. Enough power to destroy nations. Enough monsters to erase civilizations. The same enemy that had destroyed my kingdom. This time, however, they found something unexpected. They found me awake. And they found Sebastian standing beside me. The leader of the invaders laughed. You cannot stop us forever. Sebastian looked genuinely confused. Why would I need forever? The battle lasted 12 minutes. Most of that time was spent walking to the battlefield. The actual fighting was significantly shorter. The comments described it best. Author gave up balancing him again. To this day, historians still argue whether that battle counts as a war or a public execution. A year later, the world was peaceful. Mostly, the Night Kingdom had returned. Not as an empire. Not as conquerors. Just as a home. A place for people who needed one. A place where monsters and humans could coexist. A place worth protecting. I sat on a balcony overlooking the restored capital. The sunset painted the city gold. Beautiful.
Alive. Mine.
A familiar voice spoke behind me. Your Highness. I turned. Sebastian stood there holding 2 cups of tea. I narrowed my eyes. Attendants aren't supposed to call their employers that. You call me your attendant constantly. Because you are. Then consistency seems important. I considered that. Unfortunately, it made sense. I hated when he did that.
He sat beside me.
For a while neither of us spoke. The silence was comfortable. Then I asked, "So, what happens now?" Sebastian looked over the city, the kingdom, the future. Then he glanced at me. "You'll probably get into trouble." "True. You'll ignore important paperwork." "Definitely. You'll spend too much money." "Without question." "And you'll continue stealing blood instead of asking." I looked away innocently. The comments appeared one final time. She's absolutely going to keep doing that. 100%. Not even a question. Then Sebastian smiled. The rare smile. The one that had always been worth earning. And for the first time in 1,000 years, there were no monsters chasing us. No kingdoms falling. No ancient prophecies. No seals. No wars. Just a vampire princess. Her impossibly patient attendant. And an entire future waiting for them. The comments slowly faded. Looks like we reached the ending. A surprisingly good one. She kept her protector. He kept his promise. The kingdom came home. Not bad. Not bad at all. And for once, I agreed. It was a very good ending.